Hi there, it's Mrs. Komiak, and I'm here to get you guys ready for phase change with some chemistry background information. We're going to be talking with about some vocabulary words, matter, anything that has mass and takes up space, basically anything you can think of. Right now I'm in our downstairs office and I can see a lamp and the window outside I can see plants, there's air all around me, all those things are matter. Element is it's like the ingredients that make up all the things that we see, makes up the matter that we can see and not see. Quantity is just a certain amount. So you might have a dozen eggs or a cup of milk or 10 milliliters of water. Or an atom. An atom is a quantity. It's a certain amount of an element. In fact, an atom is the smallest amount of an element that you can have. Proton is the positive part of an atom. Neutron is the neutral part of an atom. It doesn't have a charge. An electron is the negative part of an atom. It has a negative charge. The center of an atom is called a nucleus. So, real quick, can you identify or describe the center of an egg? Yeah, the yolk. Can you identify or see what the outside of an egg would be? It would be right here. It would be the shell of an egg. How do we usually buy eggs? Well, we buy them as a dozen eggs, right? But you can buy just one egg. So the smallest amount of an egg you can have that's still an egg and has all the properties is one egg. And I want you to think about that as we go through talking about atoms and matter. All right, so here we have the periodic table of the elements. And remember, we use these to spell out our names, and you can go back and check that assignment. So matter is the word that means like it describes everything that has anything that has mass and takes up space. So it could be something could be living, or it could be non-living. It could be this tree, or this grass, or this hand of this person, or it could be non-living. It could be this kettle, or the water, or that's in the ice, or the liquid, or the steam, or gold, or clouds, right? So it could be seen or not seen, and it's made up of elements. There are 4 states of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. So we have solid, liquid, gas, and then plasma is things like lightning and fluorescent lights and aurora, like the aurora borealis, the northern lights, or solar wind. So matter is basically everything around us has matter, and everything around us therefore is made up of elements. And there are 119 elements, only 94 are naturally occurring that make up matter. So like if you want to make water, you take the elements hydrogen and oxygen together. If you want to make butter, you take the elements carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, and you put them together to make butter. It's kind of like making the ingredients of making cookies. What's really cool is that living things are made up of only, most of us, like most living things, 96% of us, and anything that's alive, including plants and animals, and mushrooms, and even bacteria, are made up of the same 6 elements. 96% of us are just these 6 elements: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. It's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. So we just have to have different amounts and little extra things to make us into humans, or to make us into a dog or a cat or a tree or bacteria. If you click this link, which I encourage you to do, it has this really cool interactive periodic table. So you click on oxygen and it will tell you about oxygen, where we find it. It's found in air, and it will tell you its atomic number, which is that number up here. So elements, just like everything, just like eggs come in certain quantities, elements come in quantities. And the smallest amount of an egg you can have is 1 egg, but the smallest amount of an element you can have is just 1 atom. So an atom is just the smallest amount you can have of one of those elements that we saw here on the periodic table. And these, remember, these elements are the ingredients that make up everything we see. And everything we see is, we call it, in scientific terms, we call it matter. Everything we can't see, the same thing, it's called matter. So an element is the smallest amount or quantity of an element that you can have. So they're really small. So if we are thinking about the period in this sentence, there would be over 2 million atoms there. So they're really, really, really tiny. When we join together these atoms, these elements, we form compounds. And the smallest amount of a compound you can have, smallest quantity of a compound you can have, is called a molecule. So you might hear these words molecule or compound. They're basically the same. Molecule just means the amount. So some common compounds you guys know, probably H2O or water, table salt, NaCl. It combines sodium and chloride, natural gas, CH4, carbon and hydrogen, and sugar, C12H22O11. So each atom has 3 different parts. We call those parts subatomic. We come from the root word meaning sub, meaning under, like you can think submarine. Sub also means less than. And atomic means relates to an atom. So these are smaller than an atom. There are 3 parts to an atom. Protons have the positive charge. You can think of the plus, P. Electrons, they're zipping around on the outside. They have a negative charge. And neutrons, they have no charge. They're in the center as well. They're in the nucleus. So they're arranged in a special way. The protons and neutrons are in the center of the atom, called the nucleus. And the electrons are zipping around, right? We never really know. These are just a model of an atom because the electrons are always moving. Just like if I took a snapshot and if you being in science class, you wouldn't always be there. You'd be moving on, right? It would just represent. So these are kind of like a snapshot of one time. We can our guesstimate of where they are, but they're actually always moving. So the number of protons is called the atomic number, and it's found on the periodic table. So you can see that number above right there, that's called the atomic number. So that means it has 8 protons. Right? How many protons does chlorine have? How many proteins does chlorine have? You're right, if you said 17. So in an atom, what's really cool is that the number of protons, the number of positive charges, equals the number of electrons, negative charges. The number of neutrons, the neutral ones, can vary. So if it has 6 protons, it has 6 electrons. And here the carbon atom happens to have 6 neutrons. Okay, so we have protons and neutrons in the nucleus and electrons on the outside shells. All right, here we have oxygen. It has 8 protons, 8 neutrons. They don't have to be equal, but the number of protons and electrons have to be equal. So you can see it's 8 protons. That means it has 8 electrons. Okay, and we can see here it means that it has 8 neutrons too. Okay, so the number of protons is called the atomic number, and the periodic table arranges them based on the periodic name. Base is arranged based on the atomic number. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up. This number on the bottom, it's sometimes called the atomic mass or the mass number, and that number is the number of protons and number of neutrons. So, right, so we're going to round 12.01 to 12. We know that's protons. It has 6 protons, so 12 minus 6 means that it has 6 neutrons. All atoms have an inside and an outside, just like an egg. The outside of the egg is a shell. The outside of an atom is a shell where the electrons are found. The inside is the nucleus, right, with the protons and neutrons. The inside of an egg is the yolk, right? But they all have an inside and an outside. They all have it like protons, neutrons, and electrons, but how many they have makes them different and act different. Okay. So let's see, what's the smallest particle of matter? Well, that would be an atom. What is an atom? It's the smallest part of an element, the smallest quantity of an element you can have. What are the three main parts to an atom? Well, that would be what? Protons, neutrons, and electrons. Where are the three parts? Well, the protons and neutrons are in the center, in the yolk, in the nucleus, and the electrons are in the shell. Okay, so now let's use this to help us build an atom. Well, we take the hydrogen atom. It has one proton. It has an atomic number of 1. It has 0 neutrons. And because the number of protons and neutrons are the same, right, we can know it has one electron. Protons and electrons are the same. We know it has one proton. That means it has one electron. Look, right? Helium. If it has 2 protons, it means that it has 2 electrons. So 2 protons, 2 electrons. All right, well, we're going to be modeling and drawing these out, and I just wanted to bring this to your attention. Okay, thank you. Have a great day.